We are live. We are live. Yes. Welcome back, everybody, to the new and improved earlier weekly podcast, the Attitude for Gratitude weekly podcast. Starting out the year with Rick and Jesse show. We're going to go through some questions and then we're going to be going through step one. We're going to start it off again. We're going to roll it up and do step one. So, just making sure everything and that everybody can hear us, which is awesome. It looks like we can. So, 2218, Alano Society of Minneapolis, who has a vision statement, and I am going to read that to you guys right now. The Alano Society of Minneapolis vision is to be the premier Alano clubhouse serving the greater Twin Cities that offers support and strength to those who suffer from addiction, alcoholism, and to their families. Anyone who's not new to the show knows that we talk about this every single week. It is near and dear to my heart, and that's what we support here is recovery, period. I'm sorry about the choppy conversation. I'm just making sure that we are up and running, which it sounds like we are. Got a few things to talk about tonight, and then we are going to have our returning guest start. I'm going to peel into them. This will be our first show where I'm asking them questions. They're like my guests. They're my guests every month of the year. But this time, it's not just step one. We're going to open it up with a few questions from you guys. I've compiled some from the last 2 years that they've been on the show. And I think we're going to just see where the conversation takes us, maybe the first half hour or so. And then start back at one of the most important ones we do. Hey, Rick. Hey, Jesse. They're in house. I want to talk about Jane's Gratitude Cafe that has switched to Saturday nights now here at 2218. And I still did not get an exact price on it. Do either of you guys know what the dinner cost is? I think it's like $5 or $6. It's very affordable. Cool. If you're hungry and you can't afford it, come on down. I'm sure someone could give you a little help. Oh, it is. It's $5. And it's called a $5 donation to the club. So tomorrow night, she's going to start off the year with sliced ham, scalloped potatoes, corn, dinner roll, jello, cake, ice cream, assorted cookies, water, and coffee. I don't know about you guys, but $5, you're going to get filled up, and it's homemade. It's pretty awesome. I believe that the following day is the Vikings game, which we do burgers and chips and cookies and pop for water, and that too is a $5 donation to the club. And then back at it, I believe the following Saturday we're doing a spaghetti dinner. But I will confirm that next Friday at the show. I have a monthly menu, but I'll go week to week because that can subject to change. We are doing the monthly dances here at 2218. That's this year. We ran it into the new year. It was the big whoopee party. This month, I think what they're talking about doing is trying to tie it together with Valentine's Day, have a Valentine's Day dance. Something like that. I was just made aware of that, and I will know more next week. So we had some news about our noon meeting that is held every day here at 2218. It was Jitters, and they went to another location. But there is another club here that I believe it used to be off of Portland. It was down over south, but it was called High Noon. That is now here at 2218. The name of the meeting is called High Noon. It's an open mixed AA meeting every single day at 12 o'clock here in the auditorium, same place where Jitters was at. So you can still come to 2218 for your daily noon meeting. And every single evening we've got mixed fellowship meetings. So come on down, be part of this club. As always, if you're struggling, please reach out. You can utilize this podcast network amongst other people chatting. Come to the club. Come to get to any of the Alanos or any recovery centers or whatever you can find for yourself. You're worth the fight, so fight for yourself. We know the drill. If you're struggling, all I can ask is that you reach out. Utilize this show. And on that note, this is an interactive podcast, meaning you can post comments, questions, concerns. If you have questions, post them. I will try to get to them. If you want them not read, I put my number up there. You can send me directly, or else we will see them, which is a good thing. We interact, and I suggest for you to do whatever feels best. Share this podcast. You can find it on YouTube. If you're having issues with the Facebook feed, which sometimes I've been getting mixed reviews, both. I don't know. You can jump back or forth, but subscribe, share, friend, up, down, left, right, AABB, start, whatever works. I think we're just going to jump into it, boys. We're going to jump into it with some questions, and then we'll hop over to step one if you're okay with that. Mm-hmm. So, we're still not mic ready. I got the guy meeting me here tomorrow, an engineer. I found someone.
These aren't working?
No. Here, we can loosen this, and we can spin it right out of your way. Matter of fact, here. There you go. Spin it this way, out of your way. Yeah, tomorrow I paid a guy, finally, so some higher will get something done, and all this equipment will hopefully be hooked up. So for now, like before, the microphone is next to the white dot, but I've gotten good reviews on the sound quality from off this, so we'll see how it goes, how it pans out. Are you guys okay with that tonight? We'll do a couple questions.
Doesn't matter if we're okay with it.
It really doesn't. Although, did you read the sign on the door?
No.
It's the Rick and Jesse show. And then under it, in parentheses, it says, "How's that for ego?"
Oh, I missed it.
Ah, damn it. Then how's that for my ego?
Yeah.
How you guys been doing? How was the New Year? How was your holidays?
That's perfect.
Perfect.
Good.
One word answers, you ask.
That's it.
That's good though. Anything exciting happen that you want to share?
No, we're at a podcast with some questions. That's exciting.
All right.
And Tim learned to meditate.
I learned to meditate. I learned something called transcendental meditation, and I can tell anyone out there listening, it has done some miraculous wonders in my life. It's hard. I'm talking. Rick taught me transcendental meditation, and it's a 4-day process, for 1 hour process. Over a 4-day period, it was 1 hour a day, and you kind of check in. He's call it what you will. I might be doing it. He's my, in a way. I don't know the right word, but he was my teacher. So any ups or downs that I had, questions, concerns, I would ask him. And he would ask us, how would your day go? You don't mind me sharing about this, do you?
No.
It's all right, my experience. But the way life's been going in recovery, it's been pretty good. So when other things occur, to put my finger on it, unless someone were to point it out, and you mentioned that, you said a lot of other people notice some changes before you notice changes. And behind the wheel, I've noticed quite a bit of difference while driving. And I work with a group of guys that, let's call it what it is. We bust humps. I was going to say balls. We bust each other's chops. We, out on, and sometimes it would bug me at times, or something would get in my head, and I've noticed it rolls right off my back. Doesn't concern me, or I put no thought into it. And Rick handed me, he was talking about a book, and he borrowed it to me. I'm not a book reader. I'm a listener. I've listened to 35 books last year on Audible. I just listen to books while I work with my headphone in. He handed me a book, and the reason I don't read much is I'm not the best at focusing. I can read words, but I end up rereading a page a good dozen times before I comprehend what I read. And this book he gave me, I picked it up on lunch today. and I went through 10 pages and didn't want to put it down, and I took it all in. I followed everything I read. Do I chalk that up to meditating? I don't know. That's something different. I haven't tried reading in the last year because I've been listening to books. But then I got here about an hour and a half early, get things set up, and I read another 20 pages. I only got about 10 left. And I know everything I read. That's the difference. I think just being able to clear my head and no stress. Usually when I'm reading, I'm lost in whatever crap's going on in my life. I'll keep reading, but my head's over here while I'm reading. I don't know how to. In the past, I didn't know how to shut that out. And I didn't seem to have an issue with it until I was reading, and I'm thinking, wow, this is really working. I'm really comprehending what I'm reading. And I missed a half page of what I read because I was complimenting myself on all this TM. And so, but other than that, yeah, I've noticed quite a difference. I was there with another gentleman. Have you gotten any feedback from him, how things have been working? Without names or just, yeah. I know you guys have shared about it on the show, and we've had people comment on it. I don't know, we call it your grand sponsor, a guy named Finn. He's been on the show. The day that we first started this on Sunday or Saturday, he asked to go out and get coffee, and I said, I'm going to do some. I told him what I was doing, and he really was interested in it. And then I had 3 more people message me about it. So people are just hearing you guys share about some experiences and how it's changed your life. You know what? Let's jump into that. Jesse, what has TM done for you in your life in recovery versus pre-TM and now? Is there a big difference for you?
Sure, there's a big difference, and it's twice a day. I can describe it, even just what happened this evening. So by the time I was done with work, go to a couple banks, get home, it's not looking that good out in the world anymore. No, I went to 2 banks. This is money coming my way, so it's great. But the world wasn't looking that great. So I meditated, and things look good again.
So it's not so much stress in your case on this meditation. It helped you on your outlook too.
Absolutely. The way I see the world after I meditate, and I do that in the morning before I go out into the world, and I go out and work or do whatever's needed. And then late afternoon, I meditate again, and I get a new outlook, and I'll have enough power to get through the rest of the day.
I was telling Rick at his house about one of the main, a big trigger for me wanting to do it was you got back from your trip, you came on the show, and you were talking about, you're on this long over the road journey, and you pulled over, you're tired or something. You pulled over, meditated, you were recharged for 8 to 10 more hours, just ready to go. And that stuck with me. And it did. It really did. I think early morning, I'm getting up at 4 a.m. and you guys both, right after you wake up, you hop right into meditating, right? For the most part. Yeah, I don't know if it's because it's so early, because I'm battling with wanting to doze off. I can tell throughout, like I'm stopping my mantra, and I can tell I'm getting, I don't know if it's tired or not. So I pushed it a half hour after I wake up, and I'm getting the benefits I want to see. So, but I don't want to play with it too much, because that's where I'm going to start doing. Yeah.
Good.
But I think it's a beautiful thing. Really is. My other favorite part about it is the only way you can mess it up is not to do it. That's a no-brainer for a guy like me. Okay. First question that we got from our listening audience over the past, it was one of the first questions I had sent in when you guys were on the show, and I basically used it throughout for a lot of our guests. Recovery, Rick, what were the biggest hurdles that you dealt with and then overcame?
The chaos in my mind. I had to write inventory. I had a lot of conflict, lots of resentments. When you have a lot of resentments, you'll have a lot of self-pity because you're feeling sorry for yourself because people are doing things to you. So I had lots of resentments. And when I wrote inventory, that altered all of that. Everything changed. But I still had a chaotic mind. I got rid of the resentments, but I still had what Chuck C called a grand central head. Stress. That's stress. See? And the stress is stored physically in your body. Okay. And even though I wrote the inventory and resolved the conflicts, I still had all this stress. Chuck C, when he called it a grand central head, I understand exactly what he meant by that. So I was searching for some way to shut my mind, and I couldn't do it. And this is really what opened the door for the spiritual world for me.
How far into your recovery did you get?
I was about 4 months sober. I'd finished up my inventory and that sort of thing.
So Kelly, I think keep listening, and she in the middle of you saying this, she asked, does the chaos in our mind gets easier as we get through our steps? So 6 months in, and he's worked past this step, and here he goes.
The stress was the problem. Okay. You see, one of the things that I don't want to get ahead of myself here. So I was searching to try and meditate. I wasn't going to pray because I was an atheist.
Oh, that's right.
So I was interested in meditation because I hadn't worked any other steps other than the fourth step, really.
1, 2, 3, 4.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And 1, 2, 3, I didn't even understand that I'd worked them. I understood 1, but 2 and 3 is a problem when you're an atheist.
Right.
See?
Okay.
So I didn't even know I was working it, even though I was, but that's another story.
Right.
So I put it out. Now I've done this throughout my life and had interesting experiences with it. I just put it out there that I needed to meditate. So I was going to search for a way to learn to meditate. Now I was reading what Bill Wilson said in the 12 and 12 at the St. Francis prayer. Okay. And as soon as I'd sit down and close my eyes, I had so much chaos. As soon as you sit down and close your eyes, you do settle down a little bit. What would happen is I would remember everything I forgot to take care of. And you just kind of spring out of the chair and go try and deal with things. The stress was too much. I just could not. I had so much unfinished business. Now I'm sober 4 months. I've resolved the resentments to a large degree. Had a big issue with it. Had a big experience. But I still got all this stress that's stored physically in my body and in my mind. Well, I just put it out there that I need to meditate. I just
put it out there like
in the ethers.
Oh, okay.
I didn't ask God. I just kind of put the thought out there. I need to find some way to meditate. Month or so goes by. I end up in full-blown grief over my mother's death.
Okay.
She died 20 years earlier.
Oh.
I didn't even know it was an issue. But I wake up grieving that loss. Now I'm 4 months sober, 5 months sober. What's happening is Pam and I had split up, and I lost my children and her. 11-year relationship, 4 and 6-year-old boys gone. She took the kids and left. So I had grief around that, and I wake up one morning, full-blown grief. I didn't even understand what I'm feeling sorry for myself. That's what it was. Self-pity. My thoughts were of my mother and of my ex. And losing the family. And I didn't even know this issue was in there with my mother. I had no idea. All of a sudden, I'm in full-blown grief on an issue I did not know was even there. So I had kind of got myself, a crying jag, just intense emotion coming out of my face. Literally went on for about an hour or two. Finally got myself kind of straightened out. A guy that I knew from from the treatment center I went through used to go to the downtown club. So I had talked to Larry a little bit about going, and this happened to be, I think, a Saturday. I had talked to Larry about going over to the downtown St. Paul Club. I'd never been there, but I wanted to go there. I didn't even know why I wanted to go there. So now I'm drawn. I'm drawn to something that I don't even understand. I got myself up and I talked to Larry, and he was going over there, and I met him over at the downtown club, St. Paul downtown club. We're sitting there talking, and in walks a guy that I hadn't seen in 20 years. His name was Joseph Perry. He died a couple years ago.
Okay.
And he walks in, and it's like he's in color and everybody else is in black and white. He's 25 years older than I am. And he comes walking in to Larry, and I looked at Larry. I said, geez, I know him, Larry. And I had this draw, and for some reason, pushed at me to go over and talk to him. Well, I was going to do it anyway, because the reason I was going to is because I wanted. He walked in, he had a peace about him that you could not mistake. I had chaos in my head. I had all this stress. He walks in, he looks, all I can tell you is how he looked to me at the time. He stood out from everybody else. I happen to remember him because he was an attorney, a friend of my dad's, and when I was 19 or 18 years old, I had hired him to defend me on a case, and I didn't pay him.
So it's someone you owe money to.
So now I got a conflict because I see him, I'm drawn to him. He's the first guy in AA who really had what I wanted. I wanted peace. I just wanted to shut this brain off, this head. So I got this conflict. What am I going to do? Well, I knew what I was going to do. I wasn't going to let that stop me. I'm going to go over and start a conversation. And Larry, he was all for it,
Was Larry your sponsor? Or
No,
just
Larry was
a guy
about a 7-year sober tech.
Okay.
I'm 4 months sober at the time. So I sit down with Joseph and we start to talk. Now, I knew him as Joe Perry.
Okay.
He was a lawyer. He no longer was a lawyer, I found out as we talked. He had gone away from that. Now he was being called, he had changed his name to Joseph. He wanted, instead of being Joe the atheist attorney, Joseph.
Okay.
Because it really was the sixth step. He wanted to literally, was he going to let go of that old life? And that was part of it for him in his mind. So we started a relationship. Strangely enough, he just happened to be a transcendental meditation teacher. He had studied with the Maharishi in Spain for 3 months.
Do you find this out on that first conversation?
Oh, we talked for hours.
That first encounter.
Oh yeah. He was retired. He wasn't working at the time, and he had gotten away from the attorney business, and he had a restaurant for a short time, and that closed up. But anyway, we start talking, and now I'm led right to what? Something that I put out in the ethers. I didn't believe in God, didn't believe in the spiritual thing. I just kind of put it out there. I need to meditate. What am I done? I'm led right to a guy who teaches formal meditation. So I learned to meditate. We started a relationship. He became my sponsor, and him and I were together for 33 years. He died a couple of years ago.
So how long after that encounter, that first encounter, did you get into meditation with him?
I learned right away.
Like within a month, couple months?
Yeah, I was 6 months sober when I learned to be young. Now, I want to tell you what happened out of that, but I want to tell you something else, too, that was significant. He told me that encounter with him was significant for both of us, and he was verbal about this throughout our relationship. He knew it. He talked about it. We did not come. I was 35 years old. He was 35 years old when he sobered up. He was the youngest of 4 kids. I was the youngest of 5 kids. We both raised ourselves on the street with our foot on a keg holding court with our buddies. Okay, he did it in the bars as a lawyer. I did it in a different way.
Right.
But we had the same kind of personality. We were both militant atheists. Neither one of us were baptized. We were both not baptized. I didn't know all this, but as we got to know each other, you could match our lives right down the line. And both ended up in AA, and both of us loved AA right from the start.
This is the same guy you shared last podcast about something he said to you that I want to practice it. I've made it clear on the show in the last 3 shows since you were on, and brought it up while we're doing TM, is what he said he saw in you.
He said to me over the next few years, on many occasions, he said, when we came together, he never saw anything but good in me. I never saw anything but good in him. We had a sort of what you might call a holy relationship. It wasn't an ego-based one where there was competition and craziness and infighting. It was a relationship based on respect and love of each other. And that never changed. He never looked at what was wrong in other people's view of me. He didn't see it. He'd hear people say things. He'd hear the gossip, whatever. He didn't see it. I thought that was fascinating. That's what spiritual healing is. Not looking at the error and trying to correct it. We're doing this with sponsorship. I think it's a travesty in AA.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to fix each other. We're trying to look at what's wrong with each other and fix. This is not what sponsorship was for Hill and I. We argued about concepts. We didn't agree on certain things, but it didn't matter. There were concepts. We had a very interesting relationship with each other. If you're not challenging your sponsor, you're getting brainwashed. Oh, that's
like grab a shovel. That's
Yeah.
pretty deep.
Well, that's like, blasphemy.
Well,
in
now,
AA circles.
yeah, it is. I think we last time you guys were on the show, we went down not rabbit hole, but we talked quite a bit in depth about sponsorship, and because we're on step 12, and I've with almost every guy in my men's meeting from Thursday nights, and a lot of these guys are 20+ year AA guys, and it's almost this vision of sponsorship, or how you shared about when you were speaking to the Ukrainians and the interpreter, she knew it was not a hot topic, but it's not the way things are. For some reason, it's been.
They weren't doing it that way. They were looking at each other in sponsorship roles, at what's wrong with the sponsee, and then trying to fix the sponsee or help them fix themselves or whatever. And I mentioned to her, and I had mentioned it before that I didn't set this up. I just mentioned that Joseph only saw good in me.
Mm-hmm.
And she said, that's not what we're doing. We're looking to interact with our sponsees and correct them and fix them. And see, you're looking through your ego at their ego when you're doing that. You're not seeing their spirit. In fact, you're holding them to their ego identity rather than their spiritual nature.
If I can reword it or word it in a term I think I understood, it was, if I'm over here pointing out something about Jesse that is negative, it's something I'm seeing in me.
Well, you couldn't see it if it wasn't, or you didn't have it inside of you somewhere. You'd overlook it because you wouldn't have a reference point.
Right.
It's the opposite of healing. So when you see that in me, it heals neither of us.
Right.
When you overlook it, there's something else to see that's better.
Now back to the stress. Okay.
Yep.
Because this is basically what the chaos is.
Stress.
I was full of stress. I had done 7 years of crystal meth. It's different than the crystal they're doing today. This stuff is
I think
toxic
they just emptied a car battery.
or something. It's not good, whatever they're doing.
But you
anyway,
close your eyes and it's utter mayhem. Just you can't. Your brain doesn't.
I don't know.
stop.
I didn't
Stress.
do that, but I had a lot of chaos because my life was very stressful because everything was caving in on me, and I'm trying to deal with it. So I'm doing speed to try and deal with it. So when I came into AA and when I met Joseph, I was full of stress. Well, come to find out, and I didn't know this until later, till maybe years later, really, when I learned to teach, was that transcendental meditation, the idea isn't to meditate. The idea is to release stress. So you'll think better, feel better, and have more peace of mind. It's not per se just to meditate. So if you can release the stress, you cannot help but naturally be more capable.
So, like anyone listening, imagine what he's saying is, imagine just this term of being stress-free.
Yeah.
How life would look.
Well, we don't know. We don't have it.
Until you to shed the stress in your life and truly have it gone on a day-to-day.
Well, wouldn't you guess that this might be why you're able to read better? Because you're releasing stress and your mind isn't chaotic and thinking about 5 things at once. So now you're actually present while you're reading.
Yeah.
Instead of somewhere else.
No, and that's exactly what was happening. Yeah. What stress called stress.
So I start to, I'll just give you this. Now I just want to explain something why this is a big deal for me. Okay, so now I start to meditate. I drop real deep the first time. Okay. Anybody wants to look at a video about this? There's a video online, and it's done by
David Lynch. That one? David Lynch video?
David Lynch is a movie producer. He draws a 10-minute video about this. He draws it out, why you go in deeper with this form of meditation. But that's not the point. The point is to release stress. So I start to meditate, and the stress starts to drop out, and I'm getting in, and I'm starting to feel different right away. I mean, within just a few days. This opened the door to the spiritual world. And the way that happened, and the best analogy I can give you of what I'm speaking of, is that I was focused out in the future. I'm looking out in the future to try and see what the problems are going to be, so that I can solve the problem before the problem gets to me. This is how an atheist deals with life.
I think more than just atheists. A lot of people.
But I got to tell you, when you're doing that, you don't believe in God, certainly. You're believing yourself. So you might be an atheist.
Right. Or whatever.
Not realize
right.
it. You may have a concept of God, but do you really trust? Of course not. Or
right.
You'd be just not doing that. So I'm focused out in the future trying to deal with problems because I'm full of stress and I got to deal with this stuff. When I started to meditate, it's like the difference between riding a bicycle down a sidewalk or driving a car down the freeway. You look out into the future because you're going very fast on a narrow path, and you anticipate problems like another car coming into your lane or somebody turning in front of you, whatever it is. See, and you have to do that when you drive a car. Well, a good analogy is riding a bicycle down a sidewalk. Now, I'm focused way out in front, looking for problems. That's my life. It's like riding a bicycle down a very narrow path, like a sidewalk. Somebody steps out, you're going to run them down, man, on a bike.
Yep.
That's why they made bike lanes in the streets and stuff, okay? Well, when I started to meditate, everything slowed down. And it was like stepping off the bicycle. And that's the best way that I can describe what happened to me spiritually. Excuse me. It's like stepping off of the bike and now you're walking. When you're walking down a sidewalk, rather than riding a bicycle, you can see things alongside of the path.
Mhm.
Like you can see flowers and squirrels and birds and bees. Things that make life pleasant and beautiful.
Mhm.
Now, it's not that they weren't there. They were always there.
Mhm.
Weren't there for them, okay? And this was an opening up of my consciousness. I was becoming more conscious of what was around me. And I started to see the beauty in the world instead of what's wrong, instead of the problems. And it opened up the spiritual world. Now, it didn't all of a sudden I believe in God, but I can tell you that it cracked me open. And the meditation was a vehicle.
After your first job.
After I started to meditate a few times, the stress started to go. I'm not ramming through life. I'm driving a car behind people instead of trying to get ahead of everybody. I'm not I'm doing less of that sort of thing. I'm less hurried because I'm not wasting time doing stupid stuff.
Worrying about things that haven't happened yet.
Yeah. And then you got to be somewhere in a half hour. It's going to take you to drive it. And you're screwing around at home doing all kinds of stupid stuff. And you look up and you're already late. Now you're going to ram out. And that's the way I was racing through life. This started to change when I started to meditate. That's all I can tell you. But it was the vehicle that opened up the world, a larger experience of life. And that started to pertain to every area of my life. Larger consciousness.
You said how soon in your recovery did you start thinking meditation was going to help, or that you were interested in meditating?
Well, when I got sober, I didn't believe, and that was the only way I was going to work step 11,
So was it after when you did I think you said it, but you did so chaotic.
Yeah.
Is that when you were like,
it wasn't chaotic, it was stress. The stress. So you might say chaotic. Chuck C called it a grand central head. That describes it pretty good.
Just busy.
Just busy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So not sure what the question was. Sorry if I didn't ask it properly. I think it was, did you go into recovery thinking, all right, I need to stop drinking and do meditation?
No, drinking was over. I made a commitment. Alcohol and drugs were out of my life at 3 weeks sober.
Okay.
I made an uncompromising commitment. So that had nothing to do with my journey in AA. I never looked at AA as a program of not drinking. How right that was. I've done so much right by mistake that it's almost hard to imagine. And I'm not even sure why. I was older than a lot of people are coming in young.
Right.
I was 35 years old, so I was in a different place in life maybe than a lot of the people coming in today. They're younger.
Yeah.
But I just had enough of my previous life, and I was opened up to some degree just by the sheer beatings.
I think we almost over a year ago.
So that's the first step, really. It never occurred. I didn't have to sit there and think about the first step or work the first step. I was just worked over when I got here. So that was.
I think we're going to dive into basically moving forward from that after Jesse explains to me and our audience biggest hurdle that you can recall in early recovery and how you overcame it. I usually follow it up with if you've overcome it. Majority of people that I've had on the show are within their first 5 years of recovery. I make this assumption that you guys have overcome that first hurdle. Not first, but one of the biggest hurdles that sticks out for you in this journey. That was a copy and paste about that video from me.
Well, let's go this way. So, unlike Rick's story, I was a believer. Okay? I was a believer in God, and I had studied some amount or a fair amount of religion and spirituality, but I had an experience that literally told me to let go of everything, hold my hand, and go back to AA. I had the spiritual experience, and I felt so good after that experience, so peaceful, but I really forgot who or what I was. for a couple of days. And as the weight came back in my mind, I did go to AA because the voice told me to. When I got to AA, within a day, I met a guy. We were reading page 62 that says, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles, driven by 100 forms of fear, self-delusion, and self-seeking. I'm like, whoa.
And self-pity.
And self-pity, we step on the toes of our fellows. That self-pity is huge. It's just huge. So all those things lead up to self-pity.
We step on the toes of our fellows.
They retaliate.
See, that's the key.
That's why everybody looks like jerks. Everybody looks like jerks because it looks like they're all retaliating at me.
Well, it looks like they're attacking you. It doesn't even look like a retaliation. It looks like an attack.
And that comes from self-pity?
No, that's me being driven by fear, selfishness, and self-delusion. I step on their toes first. I cannot see it. Now, it's even worse if you think, like I have it many times, think that I have good motives to do good deeds. Now, if you want to make it even worse than worse, build an empire on that. So I had tried to build these little empires, and sometimes I went from so many hundred square feet to thousands of square feet, so many hundreds of dollars to thousands of dollars.
Businesses.
Okay?
Building an empire.
Building an empire. So when I got sober, the adventure started on realizing that it was selfishness and self-delusion. That was different than all the other meetings that I'd gone to where they're like, well, just don't smoke crack and you'll be okay. Just don't drink alcohol and you'll be okay. That isn't, so it changed. The experience I had, I really thought I could skip AA.
Really?
That's how good I felt.
When you came in,
for a couple of days after having that experience, I really didn't think I needed anything to be that happy and that peaceful.
And this was one of the first times in a while you felt like that.
No, this happened, but I asked for help.
Okay.
And this happened when I asked for help in my mind. No one else was around. That's a different kind of start. So then I find this AA. This AA is this is great. I loved AA. I still love AA, but all this activity is going on, and but I didn't plan. So for the first 2.5 years, I'm sponsoring guys. I'm reading the book, and I feel better and different when I'm in this. And I'm going to build a big empire. At 2.5 years sober, it was so painful from the conflict in my mind, and the business had just turned the corner to be profitable enough that my business partner was, and even his accountant, who I just hated his accountant, they're both saying, hey, this is working pretty good, buddy. And I was in so much conflict one day, I slammed the keys down to the building. Said, I'm done. I don't know how to meditate at that point. I know AA works. I think AA is great, but I was still trying to build a big empire. And I've tried to do that more than once. Until I finally, it just doesn't work. It's too painful to do that. So the big shotism and trying to build an empire, I had to let go of that.
So, letting go of that, how did you end up overcoming it?
Well, there's some other things that happen. So
you get beaten.
Beaten into a reasonable, or no, into a state of reasonableness.
Right, but it's still really in those first lines: selfishness, self-seeking, self-delusion, and self-pity. We step on the toe. So I'm still stuck in good intentions, good quote unquote, good modes. My empire is going to help everybody. Well, it isn't.
Intentions were good.
Right.
Well, maybe.
Or you thought they were.
That's a
delusional about it.
That's the way it.
That's how you justify what.
That's
you're doing.
how we justified in our head that it's.
You justify the selfishness. So that's still going on.
That's all form bondages of self. Right.
No question about it. So that's still going on. At about 5 years now, this keeps going. Read the book with a lot of people, so-called sponsored to a lot of guys, and finally in Saturday Night Live, I'm like, God, there's got to be more to this. Show me something.
Saturday Night Live, not the Basilica.
Yes,
Basilica.
yes,
Okay.
yes,
All right.
yes. I don't know what's going to happen, but I don't have a problem believing that I can get help when I ask for it, which doesn't mean I can't be very wrong about my delusions, okay?
Right.
But having that kind of spiritual experience that started this whole thing, so then I look around the room and I look up and he's standing in the door. He looks different. He looks different than the other people.
He's pointing at Rick, the guy across the table.
Not unlike the story he tells about Joseph. He's standing, I'm like, what's with that? And then I ask, who's that? Where does he go? He goes, he's in the same building I am, and I never crossed paths with him here for 5 years. So then I end up going to the workshop. Then I learn how to write inventory one story at a time, asking God these 3 simple questions about the story, about the resentment.
He's talking about the workshop that's scrolling about along the bottom of the screen every Wednesday here at 6:30, 4-step workshop. So the 3 questions, and you're taking story by story. I'm sorry
Just
to cut you off.
one story at a time. This is radically different than anything I'd heard in AA. Now, when I heard it, I thought maybe he's doing AA wrong. Well, I've got 5 years now, and for me to have 5 years is a stream of miracles. I thought about it, and then I actually tried it instead of looking at it and thinking about it, and I had an experience by myself once again, not with the sponsor, around a big resentment where I was ready to beat someone with a 2x4. And I had thoughts come in my mind that resolved the story. I saw it from an entirely different angle, just like the book says.
Yeah, you start to think when these experiences happen. I remember thinking to myself, am I making my experiences up to match the book? I actually had that thought. It wasn't it, but that's what I thought, because it was literally inducing the same experience these guys wrote in chapter 5.
So I'm
I was
sitting.
experiencing that with the book you handed me. The same thoughts. Was I forming this comparison? No. All right. So I'm sorry. We're gonna get to that later.
So that did change everything, and once again, I'm asking for help. The help comes in a mechanical form of writing inventory, one story at a time, about just like the book says. Now, I had gone through the book with lots of people. I never had that kind of experience until I tried it by myself with a pencil and paper, or the worksheet as we have available now. And then I get thoughts that resolve my view of the other person, the conflict, the story I'm having. I'm like, whoa.
Completely different from the way you had done it 5 years.
It wasn't just a theory. It wasn't just like I read something in a book. I'm like, wow. And then the feelings inside of me, I had never experienced that much not hate, whatever you want to call it, a few times, and except in that experience I had
coming in
that launched me into AA. I felt light. I felt happy. So much so that the next thoughts that got to my mind were, I got to show my AA friends this process. And I backtracked to so-called sponsees, which that was how I saw it back then. Backtracked out 10 or 20 guys. And finally, they were like, hey, and some were interested and some weren't. And then I finally realized, just stop, Jesse, just stop. And if they want to talk about it, they can. Don't
Preach.
Preach. And I had done plenty of preaching.
A question about that, though, and this is something I always want to ask, was it, I guess it could be good intentions, but were you feeling, I want everyone to experience what I just experienced, or were you like, shit, I've been doing this wrong. I got to reteach him the right way.
Both.
Okay.
I completely had both of those. I like, whoa. And some even said, "Hey, look, I'm sober. Look at all the good things that are happening in my life." I'm like, "Well, here's the process. If you ever want to talk about it."
See, the thing with Joseph, when I met Joseph, I'd already written the inventory. I did not need him to teach me the inventory stuff in AA, the book per se. Now, some people think they have to spoon feed this to everybody.
Mhm.
Well, I don't know.
Speak on it. No, that's why I love having you guys here. Is you're raw. You say how it is for you.
You see, I had a different experience in AA than Jesse did.
Right.
Because he came into it different. I wrote the inventory on my own. I didn't have any budget or anything else. I took the big book and I just did what it said. I didn't even understand it, but I did it. And it induced the experiences of seeing things from an entirely different angle. Exactly what the book says. And a lot of it. The point of all this is literally AA has looked different to me than it does to most. I'm not a normal run-of-the-mill kind of follow your sponsor kind of guy, and we're just going to make little clones of each other. Okay, I'm not of that mind. It's not my experience. I had that experiences with inventory early before Joseph. When I ran into Joseph, I didn't need him to teach me AA. In fact, I brought the big book to him. He was 23 years sober. He hadn't been involved in it like that. See? So I'm sharing things. I'm sharing things out of the big book that interested me, that helped me. So he's getting value out of this too. But I'll tell you what Joseph gave me. 25 years older than I am. He gave me a psychological commitment of an older man with a younger man. Okay? Not to fix them, but a commitment of a relationship of equals. Not he's up here, I'm down here. We never looked at each other that way. I know that. Now, Joseph was not a normal AA guy either. Believe me, he was always speaking his mind. He was out there, with his stuff. A lot of people didn't like him early on because of his atheism. He's pushing his atheism. I mean, one time they're up in front of he told me this, he's in front of a group. He'd been at this group for months. He's new in the program. Mm-hmm. When he died, he was 55, 6 years sober. But anyway, there were guys in the group who didn't like him because of his militant atheism. He's pushing. They're always telling him, somebody said, you got to pray to make it, Joe, because they called himself Joe back then. Yeah. Got to pray to make it, Joe. He says, measure out the casket. That's what he says to him. Measure out the casket, because I am not going to pray. This is a rebelliousness of this guy. See? Well, one guy, they're standing, and this is a classic Joe Perry deal, man. They're standing holding hands, going to do the Lord's Prayer. Yeah. And one of the guys who is very religious minded, he knows Joseph. Joe isn't going to, he doesn't like this crap. So he says, and Joe will lead us in the Lord's Prayer. Listen to this, is classic. He could think on his feet like this. This guy had a big brain, man. So what's he do? They're holding hands. He says, he's going to lead it. Your Father. Not our Father. Your Father who art in heaven. What a classic. What an absolute classic, man. You could not catch this guy up. He was so clever.
He was a lawyer, right?
Why? But he just was clever anyway, man. He was a character. He just was. That was his rebellious. Of course, that settled down to some degree. Right. But he always had these different views of things. I have different views of AA, not because I'm trying to be a pain to people. I have different views of some of these things like sponsorship because it's my experience of it, okay? And I hung around the old timers here. And when I came in here, everybody was 20, 30 years sober. I was the young guy at 35 years old. They were all 50, 60 years old. These guys were beautiful. They held my hand. I've never had anything but love and gratitude for them. So I'm Joseph getting his 50-year medallion. Now, this is the kind of thing that would happen with him and I. We're all out at the retreat.
Mm-hmm.
They're putting on a big thing for him. 50 years, Joseph. Yeah, they loved him out there. He was teaching active meditation.
Okay.
He did for years. I sent him out there.
Yeah.
I said, Dave, they're looking for a guy to teach meditation. And he did it for 15 years. Well, he influenced a lot of people, man, out there in different ways. So we're at the 50-year thing. John Curtis is there. John C, I should probably say. Anyway, he runs the place. And there's some other people there that, they're of a different mind about all this. But Joseph's my sponsor, see,
Right.
so I'm out there with them. And they're talking about things, and we're giving him his medallion. And I said a couple things that I knew was blasphemy, but I couldn't not do it because it's him and I agree on this. Joseph agreed with me on this. And I said, Joseph, and if you're not, we fight all the time. I said, we fight about all kinds of stuff, concepts,
Right.
ideas.
Okay.
I said, if you're not arguing and challenging your sponsor, you're getting brainwashed. Ooh, the silence. You see, this is blasphemy in these circles.
And you're at that treatment too.
This is not good. Yeah. So I'm talking, you see, but I can't because it's my experience.
Yeah.
He agrees with me, by the way. Him and I are not off.
The more guests I've always had on here, the more meeting, I do strongly agree with you. Need to have your experience.
Well, here's
your experience.
Here's the next thing that I said. I'll come back to it.
We'll come back to it, but I was around these guys when they're having some arguments. Now, these are lively.
Heated arguments.
Well, but I got to tell you, they were more lively than I'd seen in years. But there was an
Respect.
lying respect, but there, and I could see that too. And so these things, when you can see and experience, because you're right there. I'm not hearing this secondhand, or I'm not listening to Rick talk about how his experiences. I'm there with the two of them, and they're going head to head over a debate about ideas, and I'm like, whoa, you can do that, but there's this underlying. And so I could see there's the underlying respect, but that opened up another possibility that you could have that with someone and have a very rigorous debate about something. And I've seen it several times with those guys, and I'm like, whoa, what is this? See, it was great to see it firsthand.
So you brought up, I keep trying to think of how to reword this, but we done 4 steps. You now put on the 4-step workshop. First question is it the same when you initially did it from reading the book and doing it yourself? You did it without a sponsor first go around? You just read it out of the book and did it? So the way
the inventory.
Yeah. So the way you teach your 4-step workshop now, because my brain keeps going back to saying you're teaching it the right way. I don't want to say it.
I'm just reading the book.
Okay. So when you, like you said, you didn't go to Joseph for taking you through them steps. You had already done it. Now, is that the way you did it the first time, same way you're teaching it today?
Yeah, from my experience.
From your experience on what you read in the book and you interpreted it, that's how you're doing it. See,
Yeah.
I saying it that way, leave it open for when I say interpret it, that maybe the way Jesse did it is just as efficient. But you shared that once you did it through his 4-step, the way he did it.
Well, see,
I don't even know if I'm getting to a good question.
You're getting to a good question, I think. So when I could hear what he was saying and watch it come straight and then do this process. But the key that I found is to take one resentment at a time and then without have your pen or pencil, get ready, get set, go, and then ask within your mind these questions. Where was I selfish? in that whole thing with that person or that situation. And thoughts came into my mind. Thoughts will still come into my mind if I sit down and do that exact process without a sponsor.
Yeah, I'll give you a little more of what happened on the retreat there.
Yeah. Oh, on to the second one.
Yeah.
The other thing that I said, you know, if you're not challenging your sponsor, you're getting brainwashed.
Okay.
I mean, you gotta.
And that is a
gotta,
bold statement, though, in certain
You
groups. Yeah.
Yeah, that was a little rough. There was a silence, you know. And then I said, the purpose of sponsorship is to make yourself unnecessary, not breed dependence on the sponsor. Make yourself unnecessary. Joseph made himself unnecessary. I didn't need him after a short time. We loved to get together, but I didn't need him. I didn't go to him and ask him questions about what I should do, but we'd talk about things, and maybe you'd hash things out in different
You guys
ways.
were buddies at the end of the day.
Oh.
You turned into best pals.
But we're breeding dependence on people rather than God. And once you get to a point of inventory like this, you're going to God, not human beings. We're placing our reliance on people too much.
I think that's super
That's
strong.
great at first.
No,
okay?
but what you said, the way you said after brainwashed,
the silence, I can't tell you, was deafening when I said this.
Did he chuckle too? Yeah.
Joseph and I looked at him. He knew what I was doing. He knew it was true. That's the way we think.
But I see that the statement about breeding dependency and the statement about I have this sponsor that if things are going the way, he should be not irrelevant. I shouldn't need him anymore for that aspect.
You have to get your reliance on a power greater than yourself, not people.
Like
nowhere is it more adamant than in the conduct inventory around sex. That whole section of the book, over and over and over, Bill says, reliance on God, not people. They started out that way. You don't believe me? Come to the workshop. We'll read it to you. You don't have to agree with me. We can fight about it in the workshop if you like. That's okay. I'm all for that. Come and bring your questions, bring your attacks. I don't care.
You heard it.
Put anybody down.
Come on in.
Yeah, we welcome that. I do.
I think that I do. I think that a lot of the groups I've been around, it's basically backwards from that.
Yeah.
That's the thought in a lot of these, in a lot of places I've experienced, is that you can't get through this without a sponsor, and you're going to need that sponsor for the rest of your days. And it's refreshing to hear it said the way you said it.
I stayed with Joseph until he died because I loved him.
There you go.
Not because I needed him. I didn't have grief when he died, per se. Some sadness.
Right.
But I didn't have grief, uncontrollable self-pity, feeling sorry for myself. I didn't. Why? We didn't have unfinished business. We were cool.
So
you know?
what was? How did you get through? You said you woke up with grief about your mom and the loss, or in the loss of your family.
They were related. They were reflecting.
One triggered the other.
That's right.
And
that's right.
It was that same day you met Joseph. How long before that went away?
I went through the grief process just like you would normally. They talk about it, and they're accurate with this. From my experience, the culture, our society, when they grief groups and things like that, I didn't want to push it back down. I wanted to bring it out. Okay, get it out because it's stored physically in your body, just like the stress is stored physically in your body. Okay, so I go into these crying jags periodic. They were shorter and less intense as time. Sometimes I'd be driving down the road or the street, and I'd have to pull over and just let it come out. And that went on for about a year, off and on, 9 months to a year.
After you started your meditation too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So it doesn't just go away.
It's in you physically. The meditation probably brought it out.
Which is a great thing.
Yeah, probably helped to bring it out because I was getting the stress. it's like, and Tim, you know this from learning to meditate, is that where your thoughts are, we're not trying to not think thoughts,
Yeah.
okay? Where your thoughts are where the stress is.
Those thoughts are necessary for me.
Well, they're part of
they're
releasing
yeah.
the stress. It's all good.
This next big question I had is, it might as well bring us right into one. Is we always are talking about it. Jesse, do you have a higher power today? And how did you find your higher power?
I found that higher power, really, I'd say 2 or 3 ways. One was that experience that I had. I have not had a question about that since that day. 2 is meditation. And 3 is the miracles that I see happening in AA. So this is ongoing. When I'm frustrated in the middle of the day, I ask within my mind, God, help me see this differently. Or, God, what should I do here? And then I try to listen. And I've been wrong on this, but I tell you what, at the end of the day, when all those things seem to work out, I just say thank you.
Is it ever, God, will you please take the stress?
I don't know that I've ever said that. But in the meditation, that goes away twice a day. So maybe that's why I don't ask for that.
Rick, do you have a higher power? If so, do you have a higher power? And if so, what does that look like for you?
I don't have a concept of God.
Why?
Well, because I think that the concept, when I first got sober,
I said higher power though.
Well, I know. I was
All right.
listening to people talk about God, for example, in meetings. And I'm an atheist, and I can't believe the way they believe. There's no way. I can't force
You can't believe the way they believe.
No, there's no way I could do it. Okay. So I had to do inventory first, because the grievances are separating me from an experience of love. I equate God or higher power with love. Okay. Now I'm trying to figure out what God is through concepts. Listening.
Okay.
Joseph had the same problem with this sort of thing. Conceptually, you can't make sense. Bill Wilson had the same problem. Read chapter 4, We Agnostics. He talks about this. You look out into the world, you see all the problems and all the chaos and animals consuming animals, and it's part of nature. It's part of the whole culture, the whole thing, the whole world. Well, it's hard to equate this with a loving, benign creator. Well, I had this problem. See, intellectually, I couldn't accept. Don't worry about that. Just forget about that. Okay. I couldn't do it. I couldn't believe the way other people believe. So I stopped trying. And then I was led to the meditation. And I had done the inventory already. I had started writing the inventory. I came to believe after I wrote inventory, not before. Now, I didn't come to believe through concepts. I never found. I think trying to find a concept of God is like trying to grab smoke.
So let me dumb it down for myself. Let me find a concept, something that made me say, okay, I believe now.
No, a concept that God, I could conceptualize something that's beyond conceptualizing.
So when someone says, well, look at the stars in the mountain, who do you think created that? That won't work. That wasn't, something like that wasn't going to work for you to believe. Right?
I couldn't accept it through concepts, through ideas.
Okay.
Ideas. So I had to what? I had to experience it.
You had to have your own experience.
You come in the room, you flip the light switch on, the lights come on. There's a fluorescent light in here. Mm-hmm. You don't have to understand there's a ballast in this particular fluorescent light, probably, if it's an older one. There's a vacuum inside those fluorescent tubes, okay? You don't have to understand any of that to utilize it. Okay? You come in, you flip the switch on, hey, the damn light came on. Okay? I don't understand my smartphone. Okay, I got a smartphone here. I can utilize this phone if I know how to get into the program. Mm-hmm. That's no different than the spiritual world. Now, the ideas are contradictory to what my human mind wants to accept. For example, you can't keep it if you don't give it away. Makes no sense logically.
Right.
But yet, I know from the experience of sharing ideas, you strengthen them in yourself.
Yes.
So you keep ideas by giving them away. Now, what if you're giving away grievances and you're blaming and you're hating? Guess what? You're keeping it. You're reinforcing it in yourself.
Yes.
Now, these are ideas that I was doing backwards, and it was keeping me away from love. You can't love and hate at the same time. Now I'm talking concepts. See, I'm back into concepts.
But it's part of what your experience was with this.
Well, I'm trying to clothe it in language,
Okay.
which you can't do. What happened to me, somebody asked me how I came to believe. Years ago, 10, 15 years ago. What came out of my mouth was this. I didn't think about it. It just came, probably 20 years ago now. I said, I took actions I didn't believe in, and I got results I couldn't deny. Came out of my mouth. I didn't think about it. It just came out of me. Naturally. That's what happened. I took actions. I did inventory. I meditated. I did things I didn't believe in, yet I got results I couldn't explain away.
Or
So,
deny.
yeah. So I didn't come to a faith through conceptualizing God or a higher power. I don't know what God is. I don't care. Now, if you want to do a little investigating on this kind of an idea, look up Thomas Aquinas. Now, he was the big shot in the Christian church. Okay, Thomas Aquinas, his story is interesting because he'd been mouthing off about God forever in the
Aquinas,
church. Aquinas, Thomas Aquinas.
How would you think the last name started to be spelled?
I don't know. We can talk about it, but my point of this, we can look it up.
Philosopher.
Yeah, he was the big guy. He was the big shot in the church at the time. He'd been talking about God forever. You know, he wasn't that old. I thought he was an old man. He wasn't. He died in his 30s, I think.
Yeah, he was born in 20 March of 7. Died in 74. Born in 25.
So 50-some years old.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
He didn't live that long, but he'd been talking a lot about God. Now he gets to the altar one day, and all of a sudden, near the end of his life, he has an experience. And I don't know what the experience was. I mean, it was personal to him, but he'd been talking a lot about God. So he gets some sort of an experience that shows him that he doesn't know what the hell he's talking about, because the way it was translated anyway was, everything I ever thought was straw, meaning it doesn't mean shit. I'm wrong. I don't know what I'm talking about. And that is a man who's got a lifetime of talking about God, and he has an experience that is shocking, and literally he shut up and didn't talk, or very little after that. So Aquinas came to the sort of like the highest level of knowing God is to know you don't know. I think he said something like that after that. To know you don't, it's sort of an agnostic view, if you will. Okay? Now, in the East, there's a phrase. And here, and I mean, I had a Jesus Christ experience, you got to understand, when I was 3 weeks sober. I rejected the thing, but I had the experience, and it was literally Jesus Christ. I mean, it was just bizarro, and I couldn't handle it. It was too much. But it took away the compulsion to use. Everything was shut off at that point. 3 weeks sober, that happened.
Was that in the jail cell? Was that,
no.
Okay,
no, I was in a treatment center.
Treatment center.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I can't conceptualize it. There's no way that I can make a concept of God. But I had that experience myself, rejected it. But as I've gone along, what's happened to me is I know something's been helping me. I don't know what it is. My need to conceptualize it was what was keeping me away from the experience of it, because I'm trying to put it in ideas and terms that my human mind can handle, yet my human mind can't handle, and nor could Thomas Aquinas's. He got caught with it too. See, I don't know. I don't need a concept. The need for the concept went away when I no longer needed to conceptualize it.
Kind of held you back, needing the
It
concept.
was holding me back.
Yeah.
But here now, I'm going to make a point of something. No, this is going to get worse now. Okay? This is true of every problem. Now think about this. What are problems? My problem is a need. I have a need to solve it.
Okay.
Okay? Everybody has. You have your own particular problem. I got a. Let's say I got my car breaks down. Let's say that. That's a problem, right?
Yep.
For another guy, he doesn't even own a car. He gets on a bus. Okay? So is the problem the car broke down, or is the problem my need to solve the problem, to have the car? I have a need. I have an idea that I have to have that. That's what a problem is. You know that if you stopped solving your problems, you wouldn't have any?
That's almost a no-brainer statement. If I stop, it's like,
Well,
You're making them up in your mind and then need to solve them. That was true of the concept of God. Every problem has a need for me to solve it. I have a need to have that thing be a certain way somehow. The more I backed off of solving my problems, the more free I've gotten from problems.
that's a heavy statement.
Well, it's just.
But if you back it up with what you're
you know?
saying, it makes sense. Any way you look at it, because my brain's running through all these things I think are problems.
Right.
And
Another
stepping
guy
back,
doesn't have those problems.
no, every single one I can come up with, another guy doesn't. Another person.
That's right. I know. So what is the problem then? My need to solve it. What is the problem of unbelief? My need to have a concept of God. The concept of God was keeping me from coming to believe. I mean, it's just, you see this stuff when you stick around long enough and you start looking at your life, you realize, I'm just making this crap up. And then I'm suffering out of the crap I made up. Out of my allegiance to the problems I'm making up. And oh my goodness.
No, that's
it's true of relationships. It's true of
every aspect of life you can apply this to.
Well, that's the way I see it. Now, maybe I'm wrong about that. I'm willing to open up if there's a problem that is not of my making.
You said willing. That was another question we had. Willingness. What does that word mean to you, and how important is it in your life?
Willingness.
Willingness. What does that word mean to you? We had that brought up a few times. People asking that.
Well, let me talk about resistance. I got a video clip not too long ago about resistance. To do what is necessary. And there's a funny little thing that happened a few days ago. The snow comes in. It's this deep out the door. I stand at the door. Can I or will I scoop the snow out and shovel off the car and start the car up and over? Can I or will I? The homeowner decides to change the plan in the middle of a construction project. Can I or will I attune myself to get them what they're looking for?
Can I let the boss be the boss?
Oh boy, is that a big deal. So as the day moves around, as I move through a day, can I or will I adjust to what's being called to do?
Nearly always when a guy gets fired from a job. Now, maybe there's an exception. I don't know. Probably not in my mind, but maybe. I've never had a problem on a job when I could let the boss be the boss. But the problem with alcoholics is they can't let the boss be the boss. So they get fired because they won't do things the way they're hired to do. They've got better ideas. They're smarter. It's unbelievable. Now maybe there's a time you could get fired with.
No, you're right. You're about right on that. I mean,
see, these are test drivable. This
Yeah.
idea is very test drivable. You can go back out in the big world and you can test drive that idea, which I have. I haven't been fired in a long time.
I've had to think about these things, guys. These are not things that I haven't thought through. Joseph and I used to talk about these things. We'd talk about all this. We'd take trips. We'd speak out of town somewhere. I'd bring him with me. We'd go down to Louisiana or somewhere. And he'd come with me, and sometimes he'd do a meditation talk or whatever. I'd ask the conference if they'd let him do that. And they loved him. He'd be holding court, sitting there talking to people in between meetings. People loved him, man. He was very approachable. But we had to hammer out these ideas. We talked about all these things. These were things that you deal with in your own mind. You have to think them through.
And I know I asked Willing. I think that's kind of not a silly question, but
It's kind of broad.
it is very broad. It's very broad. Open-mindedness and
How about this
willingness,
one?
and
Would you rather be stupid or wrong?
so that's it's heavy. Stupid or wrong?
And what
Yeah.
if the stupid is associated with happy?
Yeah.
Is ignorance is bliss?
Well, I'm going to have to be wrong if I'm going to change something.
Or I'll just be stupid. I'm not going to look at it.
Well, that's almost it's almost same with problems.
Yeah.
It's almost right there with
Are
problems.
you getting any feedback here?
Not as much as I would like to see on some of this stuff. So
Well, some of
that
this
made
stuff
me
sounds
think of
so
my favorite
ridiculous,
saying:
so-
sobriety is more than just a cleanup, more than just getting clean. Yeah, no. You guys are putting these big diamonds out here.
Well,
And,
I don't know if they
well,
are.
and when you say them, see a guy like me, I'm running through my head, and I'm. You're right. Everything is actable into life. We can test drive everything out you're saying. It's almost like the statement, like the meditating. It's only way you can wreck it is not do it. You didn't even give a suggestion tonight. Neither of you have. Neither of you said you should try it this way or you should go out and do this. You've told us about your experiences with a lot of things.
I don't know anything else.
And it's up to me if I want to go. Hey, I thought that a lot of what you guys say, I feel it makes sense. Best way I can say that is it makes sense to me. It just seems, a lot of things you hear trying to figure out. No, it makes sense.
See if this makes sense. And I heard this when I was a very young kid. And it caught me, and I laughed. I thought it was the funniest thing. And this is what got me in trouble in school too, because I'd hear it, and I wanted to share it and act like, I get
Like the first time you do the 4-step and realize it works.
My desk would be in the hall in grade school because I was disruptive. I wasn't mean. I was just acting out funny. I was trying to have fun. I had two or three different teachers say to me, "Wipe that shit-eating grin off your face." I heard it from different schools, different teachers. So it was offensive to them. They didn't like me being happy, I guess. So when I was a kid, I heard this from Stan Laurel. Now think about this one. Stan Laurel from Laurel and Hardy.
Okay.
He says, "You can lead a horse to water, but a pencil has to be lead."
What? I was waiting for it, but you can't make him drink water.
Of course, that's what everybody
Yeah.
says. No, this is better. You can lead a horse to water, but a pencil has to be lead. That's the humor of Stan Laurel. He was great.
He was the one. They also, and I always said this. She had freckles on her butt. She was pretty. It's where you put the comma. She had freckles on her butt. She was pretty, or she had freckles on her, but she was pretty.
Yeah.
It was it's a who's on first type of deal. Yeah, it's good humor,
It's
guys.
where you put the emphasis.
Emphasis.
You got to put the right emphasis on the syllables.
The who what?
The right emphasis on the syllables. That's emphasis on the syllables.
Okay, boys. You know,
See? That's why my desk was in the hall. That's exactly why it was.
wipe that shit-eating grin off your face. Well, we're at about a half hour left to the Do we want to attack step one? What you know? What? Let's talk about
Haven't we
this.
been?
Let's talk about this real quick. Is moving forward. We might as well hash it out here. Is what are you guys thinking for how we want to do? We I was thinking the first Friday of each month moving forward. I'd like to have you guys on if it coordinates in your calendar. But I know some of those steps we were able to rip through. Like one of them, we could maybe go. Now we like to keep step to step.
If you want to leave it on steps and do other things in between, I don't care. I don't care what we do.
Okay, you guys are up for that though. Once it's still back to, I mean,
I don't care unless you
Keep
got
it
other
like-
people who want to get in between here. You
well,
know.
I that
We could do it every
yeah.
other month. We could do it every. I don't care.
preferably from the feedback and what I get from people. Our shows are good. We're, we want that, and I think the club really appreciates you guys coming on too. They like you guys have a great relationship with 2218, and to be able to have another commitment here. I don't want to call this a commitment. It's not, because this is just what we're doing on a Friday night for something to do. But you guys are okay with that.
I don't care if you want to break it up into longer.
Well, if we
Every
that
3
the way I
months,
was thinking
whatever.
about it is no,
I don't
I
care.
want you guys monthly if you're okay with that. I know come summertime I take trips, motorcycle trips, and if they don't coordinate, they don't. By then, after tomorrow with having the engineer here, we might be doing some different stuff because that thing can come with me and plug into this, and we could have this in your living room. And
You know,
then
we
press
could
play.
do it. I'll tell you something. A topic that I'd like to talk more about too is the family afterwards, relationships, and how we're dealing with that stuff in sobriety. This is a big deal.
You know what? If I know it's kind of a lot to ask now, it'd be 11. If we come up with 11 different topics like that could be a show. We could definitely
That's not hard.
You know what I'm saying? If you guys want to,
It's just not hard to do.
we can get together for breakfast next Saturday or something and figure out a plan to. I mean, this
Well,
is
you can see what people are asking you to see if anybody's interested in what they're looking
all right.
for.
I'll look back because I know we had a show. I think it was when we were on the 4-step. This last time you guys were here, we were doing 4-step, and there's 3 or 4 people. That's when they're listening to this in a treatment center. They can't do it anymore since the more the COVID stuff lifts at treatment centers, the more they're getting back to their regular curricular activities. But this was a part of a few different treatment centers, and we had a bunch of feedback about what they would like to hear you guys talk about. I've been having, because the way I have to find that is listen to the show. These won't pop times, so I need to find that and see what it is. But I'd like to do something like that too, because we could spend almost a whole show on that. In sponsorship, I realized that last month when you guys were on, we could have. I know after I shared this with a few of the guys from my men's meeting, I have quite a few different questions about it too. I think I can compile up, and we could definitely have a show about that too. A lot of different topics. As long as you guys already said you're open to it, so good. Do you want to even try to attempt to start talking about step one? I think we talked kind of a little bit about it. How about a story about your step one? I know you've told it before. I think you both have, and you shared about it kind of tonight.
Well, I mean, I've told this story, I think, here before, probably the last time, but what happened to me was just, you know, when you read the ABCs
ABCs.
and out of the big book,
Okay.
you know, where it says A, that we were alcoholic.
Yeah, okay. Page 57. 60.
Yeah. Okay.
You were, yeah.
Okay. It says right before that, it says our description of the alcohol, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's the first 3 chapters where they describe what an alcoholic is. In the 30s, when they wrote this, they didn't know what an alcoholic is. They saw the problem on the streets, laying in the doorways. Like, you know, you can still get a picture of this, especially out in Portland, Oregon.
Right.
Portland has got people laying in the streets in the doorways and stuff. It looks just like it did in the 30s, you know. So they didn't know what an alcoholic was, so they described what it is. in the first 3 chapters. The chapter to the agnostic is chapter 4. Agnostic means I don't know. Comes from the root word gnosis, which means knowing. Agnostic was coined, what I read, by Aldous Huxley as I don't know, not knowing. Okay? Chapter 4 is designated to that guy. Then it says, in our personal adventures before and after, make clear 3 pertinent ideas. Our personal adventures before and after.
Experience.
You know what I think it is? A good whooping.
Our life adventures.
Our personal adventures make clear 3 pertinent ideas. What pertinent ideas? A, that we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. I did not need to be convinced of that. When I came in here, I was thoroughly convinced that I couldn't solve any of my problems. I didn't like it, but I thoroughly convinced myself through trying to solve my problems.
Yeah.
When all the time every time I fixed something, it got worse. Okay? So that was a good whooping. Okay? That we were alcoholic and could not manage our own lives. That's step 1, right?
Yep.
B, that probably no human power could have relieved our alcoholism. That's step 2. Came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. Just another way of saying it.
Right.
Okay? And see that God could and would if he was sought. So that's a lead in to step 3. That's sort of 2.5. It says being convinced we are at step 3. Well, that does not take long. And what got me there was being beaten sufficiently. You have to be beaten. Bill talks about this in the 12 and 12. Can I see 12 and 12 if I can see? I got it in my head. I could quote it, but I want to make sure I get it right. Okay? It's been a while since I did this. Okay, he says, at the beginning of step 1, we admitted we were powerless over alcohol, that our lives had become unmanageable. Here's what Bill writes. Who cares to admit complete defeat? I did not want to admit complete defeat. No. But I could not help but admit it because everything got worse. I don't say that to be funny. I say literally that's happened to me. Okay? I could not admit that. He says, who cares to admit complete defeat? Practically no one, of course. Now think about what he says here. Every natural instinct, these are human instincts, ego instincts, if you will. Every natural instinct cries out against the idea of personal powerlessness. It does. Now think about what he says. Now the image is beautiful. He says, it is truly awful to admit that glass in hand. Can you get a picture of this? You got to admit this. You got a glass of booze in your hand. We get into such an obsession for destructive drinking that only an act of providence can remove it from us. Only an act of God can remove it from us. I've warped my mind into such an obsession for destructive drinking. I'm hell-bent on destroying myself with it. I can't stop. Wow, nobody wants to admit that, but I got there. Then at the end of step 1, it's the second to the last paragraph. He says, it would be on page 24 of the 12 steps and 12 traditions book.
All right.
And this one caught me. These are things. What I'm reading to you are things that really caught me in my early sobriety, and it influenced me in ways that I can see when I look back now, but I didn't necessarily see it at the time. He says, why all this insistence that every AA must hit bottom first? The answer is that few people will sincerely try to practice the AA program unless they have hit bottom, unless they've been beaten sufficiently. Yeah. Okay? For practicing AA's remaining 11 steps means the adoption of attitudes and actions that almost no alcoholic who is still drinking can dream of taking. They just won't do it. They won't do it unless they've been beaten sufficiently. Now here he's going to tell you why. Who wishes to be rigorously honest and tolerant? Are you kidding? If you saw me do something, I'd lie about it. You could see me. I'm dead serious. I don't say that to be funny. Oh yeah, I'd lie about it, even if you saw me do it.
Hey, I saw you put that gum in your pocket.
Yeah.
No, I didn't.
So who wishes to be rigorously honest and tolerant of others? Whoa. Who wants to confess his faults to another and make restitution for harm done? Confess my faults to another. Again, you could see me do something and I'll deny it. And make restitution for harm done. I won't admit to it. I won't admit to anything.
Right.
I'll just lie about it. Who cares anything about a higher power? I was an atheist, let alone meditation and prayer. Not interested. Who wants to sacrifice time and energy in trying to carry AA's message to the next sufferer? Yeah, am I willing to go out and do 12-step work and try and help somebody else? I'm not saying you're going to help somebody else. Try, because the more you try and bring this message of your own experience to others, you feel better. No, the average alcoholic, self-centered in the extreme, doesn't care for this prospect unless he has to do these things in order to stay alive himself. That's where I was at last sentence. I was at a point where I had to do these things in order to stay alive myself. Alcohol and drugs were shut off, but I was miserable, and I wasn't going to be miserable sober.
Right.
I am not going to be miserable sober. So I had to do something. He says, this next paragraph, under the lash of alcoholism is the last paragraph. We are driven to AA, and there we discover the fatal nature of our situation. Yeah, no kidding. Then, and only then, do we become as open-minded to conviction and as willing to listen as the dying can be. Only as open as the dying can be. That's right. We stand ready to do anything which will lift the merciless obsession from us. Well, that was lifted from me. That was lifted from me early on. So AA never looked like a program of not drinking. Holy smokes. I did that one right by mistake.
That's another one.
Yeah. So that's kind of what happened to me. So I never had much of a struggle with the first step. It was real clear to me. Didn't mean I didn't try and control things again.
Well, yeah, that's it.
You know, the human ego is always there. You're not gonna, you have to see it for what it is. But that's really.
You want to share a little bit about your first step?
I did this evening. That's what we're going to do. That's the abrupt leaving of my body, if you will. All the pain in that direction instead of the one I was going.
See, in early AA, if you read the history and stuff, which I've read a lot of it, and then if you were around the old timers like I was, now I'm 35 years in here. So 35 years ago, I told you before, there were all 20 and 30-year guys in here. I knew all those guys. They were incredible guys. There were a couple who were real bastards too, man, but they were few and far between.
Well, there's a lot of the war guys in here, right?
Well, there was some that were real heavy-handed, but it was very few. You didn't, maybe 1 out of 100, really.
Okay.
They just weren't like that. They weren't heavy-handed and dominating people responses. But the thing about these guys, they talked a lot about this idea of big shotism. This was a big conversation when I got sober. Big shotism was the problem. Now, it doesn't matter whether you actually became a big shot. You can think you're a big shot, and it's every bit as destructive whether you became one. You think it in your mind that you're a big shot. They warned against this constantly. We don't hear much of this anymore around AA rooms. You just don't hear people talk about it. I talk about it, but you don't hear it a lot, you know.
Is big shotism same as saying ego?
Well,
Well,
yeah,
you
trying to,
It's what I was telling you about in the story after I got sober. I tried to build an empire again and be a big shot. Now,
Yeah.
that can be done in any relationship in life. I don't mean just in business. You can do it in your interpersonal relationships. It's a mindset.
you want to control your spouse, your girlfriend,
Your
your
outcomes,
boyfriend,
yeah.
whatever the heck it is. It's all of this stuff that's playing God. They warned all the time against that when I got here. Big shotism was a problem. Still is, but nobody's really talking much about it anymore, unless they've got some connection to the old timers, you know. We're losing some of that stuff. We're losing some of it.
I'm going to read 2 paragraphs out of a book to you guys. And I want your feedback. Every man has consummate genius within him. Some appear to have more than others, only because they are more than others are the awareness of unawareness of it is what makes each of them into masters or holds them down to mediocrity. I believe that mediocrity is self-inflicted and that genius is self-bestowed. Every successful man I've ever known, I'm speaking from another point of view. Every successful man I've ever known, and I have known a great many, carry with him the key which unlocks the awareness and lets it in the universe of power that has made him into a master. The key is desired when it is released into the great eternal energy of the universe. I have found out that the real essential of greatness in men are not written in books, nor can be found in schools. They are written into the inner consciousness of everyone who intensely searches for perfection and creative achievements in are understandable to such men only.
Yeah. This what he read from is from a book called The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe. It's about a guy by the name of Walter Russell. Now, you want to see an interesting guy, look up Walter Russell.
Oh, yes.
Tremendous artist. He slipped through the cracks, but it was written by a guy in St. Paul named Glenn Clark. Now, what's fascinating about this book that he just read a little quote from there is that book was given to Joseph when he became a TM teacher. The Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who taught the Beatles to meditate, Joseph went over to Spain and studied with him for 3 months, and then California for 3 months. So he was around the Maharishi. When he left as a TM teacher, they gave him that little book, The Man Who Tapped the Secrets of the Universe. It's written by a guy named Glenn Clark. Now, Glenn Clark is interesting, I think. Joseph gets this book handed to him. He didn't think much of it. Him and his wife both learned. They got it when they left the TM center. He's 23 years sober. He showed me that one day after I don't know, maybe a year, or I don't know how long I was sober. I read that thing. I went, whoa! It really hit me. It didn't hit him. For some reason, he didn't hear it at first. Then I started talking to him about it. He went back and we got into it a bit. Well, Glenn Clark. Now you got to understand, the Maharishi is a Hindu, and TM is a very old tradition. It's an oral tradition that was handed down for centuries. We're talking literally probably thousands of years. It's an old tech, completely passive. It's not an active form of meditation. So you have to go through a teacher to learn it. You can't. You won't get a book. It won't be taught that way. Anyway, the point that I'm trying to get at here, in a long way, is that this little book was given to Joseph. It really lit me up. Then I looked into Glenn Clark a little bit. Glenn Clark lived in St. Paul. He was a minister, and he had the first AA meeting in St. Paul in his home. He was not an alcoholic. He had the first AA meeting. So there's a connection to the Maharishi, who was a Hindu. He thought so much of this book that he gave them to all the teachers as they went out into the world, all over the world. And that thing landed in my lap, and I started looking in. Glenn Clark had a connection to AA. He was a minister. You can look up the history of AA. He had the first AA meeting in his home in St. Paul. In St. Paul AA.
That's good history too, to think that, you know, that reach of the world read this book, and then now they're starting to hand this out. That they started handing this out to certified teachers.
What's really strange about this book, the man who tapped the secrets of the universe, he tapped into the secrets. Can you do that? Well, that's what he's talking about.
That's what I just read.
Listen to what
it's in every man.
That's right.
That's right.
Yeah.
Now he's going to give you some reason and ways to do that, and some things that he did. It's his own life. And then I started looking into some other stuff about Walter Russell, who the book was written about. Mm-hmm. Glenn Clark was a minister. He wrote the book. Why did he write about Walter Russell? He was looking for a Renaissance man, which means he excelled at everything he touched.
He talked about living 5 different lives.
Oh, yeah. And you'll see it. You'll see it in your own life as you look back as time goes. I can see it in mine now because I've got 35 years of this kind of stuff that I've been doing. Well, the thing about this book and about Walter Russell was he had a spiritual experience where he was out of his body consciousness for 39 days.
They talk about that in here?
In this, or it may be in there.
I'm only halfway through.
Yeah. It was in 1921. He died in 1961. He was an old man, 90 years old or something. But anyway,
39 days.
He was out of his body consciousness. He talks about it in some of his stuff. He saw himself sleeping, his body sleeping. For 39 days, he was outside of himself. Where was he? Well, he felt that he was communing with the spirit. Okay, and what was revealed to him in this was the nature of cause, not effect. In other words, he talks about the world is an effect, not a cause. It doesn't cause you, you're causing it. Okay, we'll get into that. It's a whole nother conversation. But he talks about this, and he wrote a book called The Secret of Light, which is about his awakening and what was revealed to him in that period of time.
About Russell.
Walter Russell did. See, well, Walter Russell excelled at everything he touched. Mm-hmm. He also, there's a pamphlet called The Secret of Light. Okay, it was a pamphlet that was transcribed from a talk he did to the Astrologers Guild.
The electrical nature of the universe.
It's called The Electric Nature of the Universe. Yeah, that's the name of the pamphlet. The electric nature of the universe, and he talks about why things are not solid. Walter Russell brought an element to the atom bomb project. When they were making the atom bomb, there was an element they were missing, and he was part of that process of the Manhattan Project. And he brought an element that they were missing to make that bomb work, the nuclear bomb they dropped on Hiroshima.
Yeah, he was a Renaissance man.
He was a scientist. He was a spiritual man. He was an artist. The thing that's so weird about him is this guy slipped through the cracks in the art world because he sculpted and painted both of the Roosevelts in the White House. He was a class act. He knew Samuel Clemens, which is Mark Twain.
Yeah.
Okay. They started something called the Twilight Club.
I just got to that.
Incredible.
He was tasked. One of his students was tasked with sculpting 25 people. I just read that.
He did it.
Well, he stepped up because the person that was tasked with it, they didn't go into detail, but it fell through. He didn't really ever sculpt, and
he was only 6 years a sculptor.
And they were talking about
Mark Twain Memorial.
It's amazing, and I think if I read it right at the beginning was he knew at 10, 12 years old. He was already figuring out the universe, and this
guy was something. But the reason I get something out of it, because these are, you think you're limited. You're not limited. You're limited by your ego. You be a doctor. You can't be. And that's what's holding people back is their own self
Fear of
their
failure.
own mind.
Fear of
Yeah.
failure is holding people back, saying, I can't do this. And half the time we don't attempt it because of that.
But there's a connection to AA with Walter Russell and with the TM people, and with it's fascinating. I started seeing these connections. I got excited about life. I started reading all this stuff, and
Yeah, that really, like I said, it was. I don't know. It makes me want to pick up more books, and I get to chalk it up.
Feed you all kinds of
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, he referenced, I think, one of the books you said. They talked about 5 books that he wrote that I will look into. As I was reading that before, and what I read, I felt it's important. They're basically saying it's in you. You can do whatever you want.
Yeah. You're
You're the one holding yourself back.
Yep.
I always say that you're the
It's not the
controller of your
culture.
own. Yeah.
It's not the society.
It's not the
what color.
systemic this
It's not
or
what
that.
color you are.
No.
It's got nothing to do with your upbringing.
Nope.
He was self-taught. He said he did not really have any education since like fourth grade or fifth grade.
12 years old.
Yeah. Same thing happened to me. I'm self-taught too. Same stuff. I'm unscathed by education.
Well, I think that's what I was trying to get at when I was asking you about the 4-step is because you kept saying I just did it what I read out of the book.
I did what it said.
Okay.
It induced the
It wasn't some sponsor telling you how to. You did it, and that's why I said. So now you're teaching it the right way. I don't want to say the right way. The way that works.
How about by the book?
By the book.
I'm just
word for word.
That's all I'm doing. And if I'm wrong, come to our workshop. And if you think I'm doing something wrong, tell me. I'll change.
Yeah.
It wouldn't be the first time I've been doing something wrong.
Or the last. Oh, boys. I like these new hours, 8 to 10. I think that's a little better, huh?
Yep.
Let's see. Further away than last time.
Yeah.
I'm definitely not here with basketball players, guys. So, yeah, next time you guys are on, we're going to talk. I'll get to this book back before that because I know next time I pick it up, I'll finish it. We can basically all achieve what we want if we utilize the fact that we only have to plug into our own master key of desire and trust. That's huge.
You got to hook into the spirit, guys, not your ego.
And you're hearing about.
You can't do anything.
You're hearing enough experience from other people. You're hearing someone else's experience who's talking about it. Rick and Jesse and other people who've been here. And you heard them offer. Come if you see it differently, come on down.
Well, it's fun.
Yeah.
We can argue about stuff. We go out to eat after.
It lets you know that you're not being brainwashed.
Bring a sponsee down. Then when you can listen, we can go through. We read chapter 5. Then you'll have intelligent conversations with your sponsee when you're driving away.
Hey, there's a first for everything. No, I'm just being an ass. So you guys, we got the 4-step workshops every Wednesday here at 2218 in the auditorium. Park in the parking lot. You go right through the door next to the big dumpster out there, and that is at 6:30 every Wednesday. You guys fellowship after too, don't you?
Yeah.
You guys go to one of the best Thai. Is it Thai, right?
Vietnamese.
Best. They got some of the best food ever. It's really good. And these guys, they know them by name. They go right through the special entry if they want. It's good stuff. That's 4-step workshop. There is a noon meeting every day here at 2218. Unfortunately, the meeting that was going on here for however long, it's no longer here. But there's one in its place that's still got some rich history. I think it was over where the gratitude, whatever. It's high noon. At noon, here at 2218, high noon. It's an AA meeting. Come check it out. If you're on a long lunch break or a short one, come check it out. We also have the Gratitude Cafe. I think that's what we're calling it, but it's Jane's Gratitude Cafe. Tomorrow night, come on down for some sliced ham, scalloped potatoes, corn, dinner rolls, jello, cake, ice cream, assorted cookies, water, and coffee. It's very affordable. You're going to get filled up. There's good fellowship here. And then Sunday, if you want to come check out the Vikings game, you can come watch it for free. If you want to get a plate of food, like a $5 donation, I think they're doing the barbecue thing, burgers, chips, cookies, and soda, water. And I've had the 2218alano.org on the screen the whole time, along with the 4-step workshop info. If you're able to help out the club, follow that link. and help out the club. If you're looking to find a volunteer position, come on down. You walk in the front door, you'll be greeted by a volunteer. That is the grease that keeps the wheels spinning here at 2218 is the volunteers. Um, we had Scott and we had Missy on the holiday show. They were only on for a few minutes. I'm going to get them back on probably second week of next month, and they'll just talk more in depth about it. But it's something to come do, and you're helping the club out. This place is always ran on volunteers. We don't have paid employees, so if you've got time to come volunteer, please come volunteer. We didn't talk much about it, but if you're struggling, if there's mental health, please fight for yourself. You're worth the fight. Network through this, share this podcast, tell people about it. Get on a mountaintop, scream it with a blowhorn. Go rent a billboard and put it on the billboard for me, please. I can't afford it. Other than that, Jesse, what are you grateful for in life today?
Well, I'm grateful for my life just the way it is, and your enthusiasm continues to be a lot of fun.
Awesome sauce. Rick, what today are you grateful for in life?
A sponsor who made himself unnecessary.
A sponsor that made himself unnecessary. With that, we're going to see you guys next week. I've got Tina from Tradition 5 coming on. It's going to be a good show. See you then.